Imagine the sound of Hollywood's most intense actor hitting an acting studio floor with the force of a collapsing stage set, followed by 8 witnesses realizing they had just seen the difference between performing intensity and living it. Private Acting Studio, Hollywood Hills, California, March 22, 1973. The air thick with creative tension and the lingering scent of method acting obsession. And there, scattered across the hardwood floor like fallen props from a shattered performance, lay our dagger. Al Pacino's leather-bound script for Serpico, its pages spread open to reveal handwritten notes about becoming someone else, now marking the spot where pretending met reality in exactly 12 seconds. You probably think you know how this story ends. Al Pacino, fresh off his career-defining performance in The Godfather, 23 years old and burning with the kind of artistic intensity that would soon make him Scarface, standing across from Bruce Lee, 5 feet 7 inches of martial arts mastery, in a room designed for actors to explore the depths of human emotion and conflict. The setup seems like Hollywood fiction. The outcome appears scripted for drama. Method acting demands a certain theatrical result. You're about to discover how magnificently wrong performance can be when it collides with authentic power, and how 12 seconds can teach the difference between playing a warrior and being one. But to understand the earthquake that shook that acting studio, you need to know about the creative fault lines that had been building all week in the heart of a Hollywood obsessed with finding truth through pretense. March 1973, and Al Pacino is at the most dangerous point in any young actor's career, the moment when early success threatens to become a prison of expectations. The Godfather has made him famous, but fame in Hollywood is like holding lightning in your hands. It illuminates everything while burning whoever tries to control it. Pacino has always been different from other actors. Where they seek fame, he seeks truth. Where they want applause, he wants transformation. His approach to acting isn't performance, it's possession, allowing characters to inhabit his body and soul so completely that the line between Al Pacino and his roles becomes meaningless. He's preparing for Serpico, the role that will define him as completely as Michael Corleone, but in the opposite direction. Where Michael was controlled calculation, Frank Serpico is raw honesty. Where Michael wore masks, Serpico tears them away. The preparation requires Pacino to find something inside himself that most people spend their lives avoiding: absolute, uncompromising authenticity. This brings him to Elena Rostova's private acting studio, a converted warehouse in the Hollywood Hills where serious actors come to explore the kind of emotional territories that mainstream Hollywood prefers to keep safely fictional. Elena is Russian, trained in the Moscow art theater tradition, and her methods make conventional acting teachers look like kindergarten instructors. The studio itself reflects Elena's uncompromising approach. Bare hardwood floors, mirrored walls, no furniture except what's needed for specific exercises. The space is designed to strip away everything except raw human truth. No costumes, no sets, no props, just actors and the emotional content they can access within themselves. Pacino has been working here for 2 weeks, diving deeper into method acting techniques than he's ever attempted. 8 hours a day of emotional archaeology, digging through layers of personality to find the bedrock of authentic feeling. The work is exhausting, transformative, and occasionally dangerous in ways that make physical risk seem trivial by comparison. This particular evening, the session includes 7 other actors, all of them serious students of the craft, all of them drawn to Elena's reputation for producing performances that transcend entertainment and become something approaching art. The group includes 2 Broadway veterans, 3 film actors working on challenging roles, and 2 European performers studying American acting techniques. They've been working for 3 hours on an exercise Elena calls emotional combat, improvised scenes where actors must find and express genuine conflict without falling back on theatrical conventions. The goal is to access real feeling, real tension, real human dynamics without the safety net of predetermined outcomes. Pacino has just finished a scene where he had to find authentic rage, not the performed anger that audiences expect, but the actual physiological and psychological experience of fury. The work left him shaking, sweat-soaked, and strangely vulnerable in the way that only happens when you've stripped away all your protective layers. That's when Bruce Lee walks in. He arrives at Elena's invitation, introduced by a mutual friend who thought the martial artist might find common ground with actors dedicated to authentic expression. Elena has been intrigued by Bruce's philosophy about emotional content in martial arts, his insistence that technique without feeling is just mechanical movement. Bruce enters quietly, wearing simple black training clothes, carrying himself with the relaxed alertness that experienced fighters develop. In the context of the acting studio, surrounded by people whose lives revolve around emotional expression and artistic intensity, he appears almost mundane, just another visitor observing the process. But Pacino notices him immediately, notices the way Bruce moves through space without apparent effort, notices how his presence changes the energy in the room without any obvious attention-seeking behavior, notices most of all the quality of stillness that surrounds him, not the forced calm that actors learn to project, but something that seems to emerge from genuine inner quiet. Elena introduces Bruce to the group, explaining his background in martial arts and his interest in the relationship between physical technique and emotional authenticity. Several of the actors have seen his work on The Green Hornet or heard stories about his demonstrations. To them, he represents an interesting intersection between Eastern philosophy and American entertainment. Bruce teaches that fighting without emotional content is just dancing. Elena explains to the group, "Perhaps we can learn something about bringing authentic feeling to our own work." The actors nod politely, but Pacino studies Bruce with the focused intensity he brings to everything that interests him. Here is someone who claims to understand authentic expression through physical action rather than spoken words, someone who insists that technique must be driven by genuine internal experience. "Tell us about emotional content," Pacino says suddenly, his voice carrying the kind of direct challenge that makes everyone in the room pay attention. "What does that mean in fighting? How is it different from what we do here?" Bruce considers the question with the same careful attention he might give to a complex philosophical problem. When he responds, his voice is calm but carries an authority that suggests direct experience rather than theoretical knowledge. In martial arts, emotional content means that every movement, every technique, every response comes from genuine internal state rather than memorized patterns. When you punch without feeling, you're just moving your hand through air. When you punch with emotional content, you're expressing something real through the technique. Pacino leans forward, his dark eyes intense with interest. "But how do you know if the emotion is real or if you're just performing intensity? How do you tell the difference between authentic feeling and convincing yourself you feel something?" It's the kind of question that goes to the heart of method acting philosophy, the central challenge that serious actors wrestle with constantly. The danger of substituting performed emotion for genuine experience, of becoming so skilled at mimicking feeling that you lose touch with the actual thing. Bruce looks at Pacino with new attention, recognizing someone asking a serious question rather than making casual conversation. The difference is in the consequence. When actors perform emotion, the only risk is that the performance might not convince the audience. When fighters express emotion through technique, the consequence is immediate and physical. Reality provides instant feedback. The comment lands in the studio like a small, explosive device, quietly detonating assumptions about the relationship between art and authenticity. The actors exchange glances, understanding that Bruce has just suggested their entire profession might be built on a kind of sophisticated self-deception. Pacino's response is immediate and passionate. "But we're not just performing. What we do here, this work, we're accessing real emotions, real experiences, real parts of ourselves. The fact that we're doing it in service of art doesn't make the feelings less genuine. His voice carries the conviction of someone who has spent years developing techniques for emotional honesty, someone who has built his career on the ability to find authentic human truth and express it through his craft. The suggestion that his work might be fundamentally different from real emotional expression touches something deep and defensive in his artistic identity. Bruce nods slowly, not dismissing Pacino's point, but not entirely accepting it either. I don't doubt that what you access is real, but what happens when you access anger here, in this safe space, surrounded by people who understand it's part of your artistic process? What are the actual stakes? What could go wrong? The question hangs in the studio's recycled air like the scent of honest sweat. Around them, the other actors listen with the focused attention of people who recognize a fundamental challenge to their worldview. This isn't casual philosophical discussion anymore. It's become something that feels like a test. Pacino stands up from where he was sitting on the floor, his movement carrying the kind of coiled energy that audiences recognize as his signature intensity. But here, in this stripped-down environment, it feels less like performance and more like genuine preparation for confrontation. "You want to know about stakes," he says, his voice dropping into the register that made Michael Corleone terrifying. "You want to see emotional content with consequences? I'll show you what actors can access when we stop protecting ourselves." Elena steps forward, recognizing the signs of an exercise that might be moving beyond safe boundaries. But Bruce raises a hand slightly, not dismissing her concern, but indicating that he's willing to see where this leads. "Show me," Bruce says simply. What follows next becomes part of Hollywood legend, though only 8 people ever witness it and only 3 ever speak of it publicly. Pacino begins an improvisational monologue, drawing on the rage he's been exploring for Serpico, the righteous fury of someone who has seen corruption and decided to stand against it regardless of personal cost. But something different happens. Instead of the controlled emotional exploration that characterizes method acting, Pacino appears to tap into something rawer, more dangerous. His voice rises, his movement becomes more aggressive, his entire physical presence shifts into something that feels genuinely threatening rather than theatrically intense. The other actors watch with growing concern as Pacino's improvised performance escalates beyond the boundaries of artistic exploration. This isn't method acting anymore, it's method becoming, and the person emerging might not be entirely under Al Pacino's conscious control. "This is what real emotion looks like," Pacino shouts, his face flushed, his hands clenched into fists. "This is what authentic expression means when you stop hiding behind technique and training and all the safe little exercises that protect us from actually feeling anything." He turns toward Bruce, his eyes blazing with the kind of intensity that can cross the line from artistic to dangerous without warning. "You think we're just playing games here? You think what we access isn't real? I'll show you real." Bruce watches this escalation with calm attention, understanding that he's witnessing something authentic and potentially problematic. Pacino has accessed genuine rage, but the context isn't providing appropriate boundaries for expressing it. The actor has found real emotional content, but lost the framework for controlling it safely. As Pacino approaches him, Bruce realizes that this has moved beyond philosophical discussion or artistic demonstration. The young actor is genuinely angry, genuinely aggressive, and genuinely committed to proving his point through direct confrontation. "Al," Elena calls out, her voice carrying professional concern. "Perhaps we should." But Pacino cuts her off with a gesture that's more menacing than dismissive. "No. This is important. This is about whether what we do here matters, whether actors can access the same authentic power that fighters claim to understand." He stops 3 feet from Bruce, his entire body radiating the kind of barely controlled aggression that makes everyone else in the room step backward instinctively. The line between artistic exploration and actual threat has been crossed, and everyone present understands that what happens next could have real consequences. "So show me," Pacino says, his voice low and dangerous. Show me how your emotional content is different from mine. Show me what authentic expression looks like when the stakes are real." Bruce looks at him for a long moment, his expression unchanged, his breathing calm. When he responds, his voice carries no challenge, no threat, just genuine curiosity about a fellow seeker of truth. "Are you sure that's what you want?" "I'm sure." Bruce nods slightly, then moves. What happens next lasts exactly 12 seconds, but redefines everything. Everyone in the room believes about the relationship between authentic expression and controlled power. Bruce doesn't attack Pacino, doesn't strike him, doesn't use force in any conventional sense. Instead, he simply approaches the actor with the same calm attention he's maintained throughout their conversation, reaches out with one hand and places it gently on Pacino's chest, just over his heart. The contact is minimal, barely qualifying as physical interaction. But something in that touch, something in Bruce's absolute presence and focused intention, stops Pacino's escalating aggression as completely as if someone had turned off a switch. The rage that had been building, the authentic fury that Pacino had accessed through his method acting training, simply dissipates, not suppressed, not redirected, not overcome by superior force, just dissolved. Like steam returning to water when the temperature drops. Pacino stands there, Bruce's hand still resting lightly on his chest, his face showing complete bewilderment. The anger is gone, not defeated, not conquered, just no longer present, as if it had never existed at all. "This is the difference," Bruce says quietly, his voice meant for Pacino alone, but carrying clearly to every witness in the silent studio. "When you access emotion for performance, you control it within safe boundaries. When you express emotion through authentic action, you must be prepared for it to be met by reality. Reality always wins." He removes his hand, steps back, and the spell, if that's what it was, is broken. But Pacino remains standing exactly where he was, looking like someone who has just discovered that everything he thought he understood about intensity and power might be incomplete. The silence in the studio is absolute. 8 witnesses frozen in place, trying to process what they've just observed. No violence, no dramatic confrontation, no theatrical resolution. Just one person's authentic expression being met by another person's authentic presence, with results that none of them could have predicted. Elena breaks the silence first. "What did you do?" Bruce looks at her, then at Pacino, who is still standing motionless, his face showing the kind of confusion that comes from having fundamental assumptions challenged by direct experience. "I showed him what I meant about emotional content with consequences," Bruce says simply. "When you express genuine emotion, you must be prepared for that expression to be met by someone else's genuine response. In this case, my response was to offer presence instead of resistance. When aggression meets true stillness, it has nothing to push against, so it dissolves." Pacino finally finds his voice, though it comes out much quieter than anyone expects. "I was really angry, genuinely furious, not performed, not acted real." "I know," Bruce says, "and now." Pacino considers this, testing his internal state the way an actor learns to do. It's gone, not suppressed, not controlled, just absent, like it was never there. That's the consequence of authentic expression meeting authentic response. Reality provides immediate feedback, and sometimes that feedback teaches us that what we thought was real was actually something else. The lesson continues for another hour, but in a completely different tone. Bruce demonstrates several martial arts principles, not as techniques but as expressions of internal states made manifest through physical action. The actors, including Pacino, participate with the humility of students who have just discovered that their understanding of a subject they considered themselves expert in is far more limited than they realized. But it's Pacino who emerges most changed by the encounter. The experience of having his genuine emotional expression met by something that transcended both performance and aggression has opened questions about authenticity that will influence his approach to acting for the rest of his career. Over the following weeks, he seeks out Bruce for additional conversations, not about martial arts, but about the nature of authentic expression itself. These discussions inform his preparation for Serpico in ways that traditional method acting techniques never could have, helping him find a kind of truth in performance that goes beyond mimicking genuine emotion to actually channeling it. The 8 witnesses to that evening's demonstration keep the story among themselves, understanding that they've seen something that exists at the intersection of art, philosophy, and human development in ways that most people wouldn't understand or believe. But the influence of what they observed spreads through their own work, creating a small but significant shift in how certain serious actors approach the challenge of authentic expression. Today, 50 years later, Al Pacino is recognized as one of the greatest actors in film history, someone whose performances transcend entertainment to become studies in human truth. In interviews, he occasionally references the importance of finding authentic emotional content, of moving beyond technique to access something real and immediate and consequential. He never publicly tells the story of that evening in Elena Rostova's studio, but those who know him well say that it marked a turning point in his understanding of what acting could be when it stopped being about convincing audiences and started being about discovering truth. Bruce Lee died just 4 months after that encounter, his physical body surrendering to mortality even as his influence on martial arts, philosophy, and human potential continued to spread around the world. But the principle he demonstrated that evening, that authentic expression must be prepared to meet authentic response, continues to guide seekers in every field where truth matters more than appearance. The real encounter that night wasn't between an actor and a martial artist. It was between 2 different approaches to accessing and expressing human truth, between the protected exploration of method acting and the immediate consequences of authentic action, between performing intensity and embodying it. In that encounter, witnessed by 8 people in a Hollywood Hills studio, both approaches discovered their limitations and their possibilities. Pacino learned that genuine emotion without appropriate boundaries can become dangerous rather than artistic. Bruce learned that the search for authenticity exists in many forms and that actors at their best are fellow travelers on the path toward truth rather than mere performers playing at reality. The leather script scattered across the studio floor was collected and reassembled, its handwritten notes about becoming someone else, now mixed with new understanding about what it means to be authentically oneself. Some lessons last 12 seconds but change everything that follows. In a room designed for people to safely explore the full range of human experience, 2 masters of different disciplines discovered that authentic expression requires not just the courage to access truth, but the wisdom to respond to it appropriately when it appears. The floor remembered, the witnesses remembered. The lesson endures, that the greatest performances aren't about convincing others of our intensity, but about finding the stillness deep enough to meet whatever intensity life presents with appropriate response. Some encounters last minutes, but teach lifetimes. Some demonstrations of power are measured not in force applied, but in force dissolved. Some victories come not from overcoming opposition, but from showing it a different way to exist. In an acting studio where method was scripture and intensity was gospel, 2 men discovered that authentic expression and authentic response create something beyond both performance and conflict. They create understanding. The script was reassembled, the lesson was absorbed, the truth remains eternal.